Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. On today's video, I am going to be reviewing a new release from Baltany. This is the 1926 Oyster Tribute. Now, to some of you guys that might mean something. I actually don't know what watch it's homaging, but it is homaging something more than likely from the 1920s, as the name states. Now, we've seen plenty of Baltany watches on this channel, and they're a brand that I think a lot of people do sleep on. They are one of the most consistent brands out there. I have yet to be disappointed by Baltany. So let's see what this watch holds for us, being one of the releases. They have released something similar, and a lot of the watches do have this reoccurring theme of this vintage watch style. This one is a bit more dressy, I suppose, than a lot of the dive watches or the traditional field watches, but it does have still some of those characteristics. Now, this watch is rather small. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but the dimensionally, this watch is 36 millimeters, which is quite hard to believe. It does look a lot smaller in hand. That I can assure you guys. You've got a case thickness of just 11.3 millimeters. And while that might not seem overly thin, it does look quite thin in real life. Lug to lug is just a mere 43.3 millimeters. And that's one of those things which does make the watch appear smaller than it actually is. Lug width of 18 millimeters. Spec wise, pretty standard specifications. You've got a stainless steel case. This one is fully polished though. You've also got a sapphire crystal, slightly domed with some AR coating on there. A very healthy water resistance rating of 100 meters. Overall weight of 55 grams, and the movement this watch runs is the Seagull ST1701. Now, we are quite familiar with the Seagull movements, thankfully, due to this, homage industry, especially from AliExpress. A lot of brands do use them. But with regards to the actual movement, it is quite comparable to the Miyota 8215 in terms of reliability. I haven't heard any major issues you have with these movements. It's a beat rate of 21,600 vibrations per hour. Usually a power reserve of around 40 hours. And this one on the time grapher ran really well. It was pushing around 17 seconds a day with a 270 degree plus amplitude, which is very healthy. And then a beta of 0.1, again, is running with really tight parameters, considering it is, quite an older movement. It's quite rudimentary, it's quite cheap, but the numbers tell us that this movement is quite healthy. Now, stats and specs out the way, how does it compare with the price that we get? What's the value add factor of this? The price is £140 on a leather strap. You do have two dial options. You've got this black that you see in hand, or the black and gold combination, and then you also got a white mother of pearl dial option. There's no price difference in the mother of pearl to the actual black dial. However, you do have a price difference when you look at strap options. They offer this watch in also a mesh option, and that brings the price of £255, which I think, like £15 for a mesh strap, is a bit pricey, especially on AliExpress. Those mesh straps are quite a bit cheaper. That being said, the watch in front of me, it is very beautiful. It's got all those vintage features that you want, and Baltany are really good at capturing this. As I said, they haven't disappointed me to date. And when you get a Baltany in hand, they just tick so many boxes, and they are quite unique in AliExpress. And I use that word loosely, as I do when I speak about Baltany. Yes, we know they're tribute watches or homage watches, but they're not following the curve. They're not chasing all the popular watches that you see on AliExpress, and they're not following anybody else. They have their own unique twist on watches, and I'm glad they've stayed within that boundary. And I'm not tried to chase the money, for example, and gone for, the sub homages, the omega homages, etc. And they've stuck to something which I think they're quite good at. Now, if you take a closer look at the watch, it's full of very interesting features. The dial, you've got your numerals on there. They've actually done something differently. The numerals are quite flat. However, they've done a sort of shadow print on there, which gives them a 3D effect. The lume applied on the dial and the handset is the all radium lume that we've seen on so many others. You've got a lovely concentric disc in the center in white, which hosts that running seconds hand at the 6. Of course, it does cut off the numerals, but at the same time, you do get a symmetrical look to the dial. Baltany text just below the 12 in white, inoffensive, and it's a name which doesn't bother too many people. I think we've just become accustomed to it. You've also got a mini track around the dial in the traditional train track style that you find on a lot of vintage watches. Now, all that is complemented with this rather lovely fluted bezel in gold. The machining on this is perfect. It's so soft in hand, it's so spot on, considering how intricate the pattern is. There's a lot of things that could go wrong, but there's no rough edges. It's very smooth, and it's been done beautifully. Now, that is also complemented with that gold crown, lovely onion crown, good size on it considering it's a small watch. This crown's around the 6 millimeter mark. Screws down also very nice, great to grip. The threading isn't the best, it's not perfectly buttery smooth. However, it's not too rough either. It's not the worst that I've felt. The handset that they have furnished this watch with is of course cathedralized, again in gilt, to complement the gilt that you get on the rest of the watch case. And it does look brilliant. I think it's something definitely does capture that 1920s era. And again, Baltany really honing in on what they're really good at. With regards to the loom on this dial, the loom is surprisingly good. Even though the hour markers look quite flat on the dial, there is ample layering provided. You can see how bright that is. It's perfectly legible, and I've got no issues with the loom on this watch. Moving on to the case, as I said, it is a fully polished case. Now, that might deter some people, but I think it's quite fitting with the theme, because a lot of the older watches were in fact fully polished. And what you get is over time as you wear it, and all the scratches and all the little marks and the dinks you're going to get on this watch really do give this watch some character. So all the shininess will actually go away. It'll get scuffed up, but I think that's part of the whole charm. But if you wanted to keep it clean or maintain it, it would be quite difficult, again, just due to that polishing. But the case profile is beautiful, very smooth, but no rough edges at all. And I like how they've curved everything. They have paid attention to this, watch case, and it feels so slick in hand. And I think that size really does benefit it if you do like smaller watches. You've got a coin edge screw down case back and a similar fluting design that you find on the bezel, so some continuity there. Really good to see. And I love looking at Baltany watches because they kind of really pay attention to the watch. Usually there's nothing that does stand out, like that shouldn't be there, but you can see as I'm taking around this watch, they have thought about so many things, and it just feels right. It fits the time that it's supposed to represent, and I think it's a nice little watch. Moving on to the strap, and I think that plays a big part as well. They've given a genuine leather strap, but you can see the texturing on the actual skin, beautifully textured. You got the full-on scale pattern, and it is very soft and supple, not one of those tough leather straps. Decent thickness on the strap, and of course you've got matching hardware, with the gilt on the case, which I think is an important detail that they have thought about. So Baltany, as I said, to date they have not disappointed me. They definitely know what they're doing. I would love to speak more to the guy behind it, or the minds behind it, and get an understanding into how they sort of pursue this homage game from their side. As I said, they haven't gone in started copying everybody else. So yeah, I really like the fact that they are standing firm on AliExpress, and just sticking to what they know. So let's see how this watch looks on wrist. Now here's this Baltany 1926 Oyster Tribute on my 6.5-inch wrist, and I have to say, as soon as you put this on wrist, it does transport you back to a much older time. There's a lot of character in the watch, and it fits, very vintage. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying, but that's how it feels. The case sits spot on the wrist. As I said, a 6.5-inch wrist isn't the largest size out there, and with that short lug to lug, you find it sits dead center. And yeah, it's a really good watch. I can't really say anything about it. Obviously, the design is entirely subjective. If you are someone that likes these watches, or you do favor vintage style watches, so for £140, I think taking the consistency into consideration, and the value that they represent, they don't have that many quality issues, or I haven't experienced any myself. I think it's a very good price for something very different on the AliExpress platform. So if you do like this, check out the link within my description below. Let me know your thoughts in the comments also. And like always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.